So this is going to be our last example of a laboratory technique that tells us something about the minerals that makes up a rock. So this is going to be called mass spectrometry. And the way that this is going to work is you're going to take your mineral and then you're going to grind it up into a powder. Okay, then you're going to take the powder and you're going to heat it up to the point at which it turns into a gas. As a matter of fact, you're going to heat up this thing so much that the mineral is going to start to fall apart into the individual atoms and chunks of atoms that made up the mineral. So like for example, a simple one would be calcium carbonate. So maybe if you heated this thing up enough, you would separate the calcium part from the carbonate part. So that would be a very simple one. But in more complicated minerals, you're going to have more atoms that are glued together, so you're going to have more chunks of that particular mineral. So the next thing that happens is it's going to pass through a tube, all of these chunks, and then it's going to enter a magnetic field. Because, like for example, calcium carbonate, when you break it apart, you end up with calcium, which is going to be a +2, and then carbonate, which is going to be a -2. So they're going to be electrically charged. And so when they pass through the magnetic field, depending on how big the chunk is, it's going to bend in that magnetic field. So the bigger the chunk, the less it's going to bend. So let's say that this is a big chunk of that mineral, and because it's so heavy, it doesn't really deflect very much. But a lighter piece of that mineral is going to be deflected more by that magnetic field. Then you have a detector that can detect how many of these chunks are hitting it, and it can also detect what's the charge of those chunks and what's the mass of those chunks, and then it's going to display it for you. And then what you can do is you can take that data and analyze it, and you can figure out what were the original atoms that made up the mineral sample. Okay, so now we're gonna, for our final segment here of this lesson, we want to just look at some charts that allow us to identify rocks in the field.